Hi, everyone. Today we're talking with Ariel Zhang, who is the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Animal Foundation in Las Vegas, Nevada. I met Ariel just a little over a month ago, and it was one of the most interesting connections that I'd like to share it with you. It was March 19th. It was during a Friday. Was it a Friday call or a Monday call? I'm not really sure, but the reality was it was happening at the just the week before had been the Atlanta killings. And prior to that, our news feeds were filled with all sorts of hate crimes and violence perpetrated against Asian Americans and people of Asian descent. And yet, during that call, nothing at all was said to acknowledge what Asian Americans who are in animal welfare might be feeling as a result of all of that. And Ariel Zhang reached out to me through LinkedIn, which is kind of unusual because it's the only kind of social media that I actually respond to. And she sent me an email, and I'd like to read part of it with you. I was incredibly disappointed that no one even mentioned support to Asian colleagues in light of recent events, not just this week, but in the past months. Perhaps it was because I'm the only person on that call that looked like me. But if we are to one day change that, we have to allow the environment to do so. I see so much opportunity in this industry and only want what's best. I hope my choice to speak up won't be taken as attacking. I don't believe the oversight was malicious or even intentional, but I feel that even accidentally being exclusive is still a concern to the cause as we grow. And that is so true. And it was so wonderful to get this, to be called out by Ariel. And as a result of that, we were able to make some changes in things. And actually, in sort of a weird kind of way, it got us to this point today. So I'm really, really happy to be able to spend the next half hour or so with all of you and with Ariel. And but first, we're going to show you a video. We sat down with Ariel a few weeks ago and asked her some questions about what her experience have been in life and in animal welfare. And we're happy to be able to share that with you today.
Hi, I'm Ariel Zhang. I am the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Animal Foundation. It's my responsibility to lead our organization from a municipal shelter to a community support resource. My career has been focused on implementing global technology transformations for for-profit corporations. And 3 years ago, I was engaged and getting married in a month, and I was making some moves in my career, and I got this amazing job offer from a Big Four consulting firm. And because I'm Canadian, I needed to go up to the border and apply for a work permit. And so I did that. I went up to the border and turned around. And because I was getting married, they felt that I had immigration intent for a non-immigrant visa. And over the course of 3 hours, I went from, buying a house with my fiance to essentially being homeless. And, being in Canada for that year, away from my loved ones and all of my possessions, basically, really made me think about the instability of the immigration process and what a lot of immigrants and migrants in the United States face while going through this process. I really had this opportunity to step back and think about my career trajectory and where I really felt the value was. And I miss nonprofits a lot. I wanted to be able to be a part of something bigger. And when I thought about animal welfare, I really thought about how impactful it was as an industry, because we are one of the only industries that span across all the different causes. We touch housing insecurity, food insecurity, health services, domestic violence. And being in this industry made me feel that I could be a part of something that really, truly made a difference. When I think about the animal welfare work that we do in our communities, I think that so far we've thought really in our local communities. But what really inspired me when I joined the industry is seeing how diverse those communities are. As the United States gets more immigrant and migrant populations, we're really seeing our local communities become global communities. And when I think about my immigration challenges, from being denied at the border, from the uncertainty in the entire immigration process, these processes typically take years and money, and at any point you don't know what really is going to happen, and that kind of insecurity really is impactful to your life and your mental well-being. And when I think about these immigrant populations and migrant populations and our ability to work with them, it's really important from my perspective, to be able to approach this in a language that they speak. It's not only a language as far as maybe someone speaking Spanish or Chinese, but also a cultural language. And I think that there's an opportunity for us, if we want our programs to land in these communities, to learn about these cultures, whether it's just learning more about these cultures from your own experiences, through listening and understanding. I think that this will really help us get our programs into these communities in a way that's understood. And a great example of that is the other day I was having this conversation with Dr. Kate Hurley, and she mentioned, if you come from a country that doesn't have spay or neuter, and that's not the social norm as it is in the United States, then should we be punitive to them? I mean, one conversation is from a socioeconomic status, but also from a global lens. At the Animal Foundation, as a part of our strategic plan, we really took a deep dive into diversity, equity, and inclusion and made it a pillar of our soon-to-be new strategic plan. We really wanted this work to be not only conversational. Through conversations, we learn and we understand better the issues that our communities face, but we really wanted to see tangible actions. And so that's coming about in 3 different ways. The first way is in our hiring and recruiting practices, so eliminating barriers that don't need to be there. Do you need to have a driver's license? If someone can get to the office a different way than driving, do they need to have a driver's license? Do we need them to have a high school diploma? What if they come from another country and you can't validate their high school diploma? So those are the things that we want to take down as barriers to working at our organization. The second piece of it is really what kind of voice can we give to our communities? So if we know that the communities don't look like us and have come from different cultures and backgrounds than we do, then we know that our programs won't land until we speak the language and come from an approach that they understand. The third piece that we're thinking about is how to be inclusive at the leadership level and make sure that we have a well-rounded set of skill sets, backgrounds, cultures, all working together to think through successful approaches into getting our programs out in the community. I love data, and as the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives, I look at data a lot to support our strategic plan to make sure that our programs are truly being successful and the direction of the organization is really supporting the needs of the community to come. And when I think about DEI, I also think that we should take a look at the data. I think we should look at, do your programs, the people who receive your programs are involved in your programs, do they look like the communities that you serve? Is the message really, really landing in people of color, in people who speak different languages, in people who come from different cultures? To me, really mobilizing these DEI conversations into actions, that's how we can do that.
Due to 2020's COVID-19 pandemic, hostile tensions toward Asian Americans have skyrocketed.
Over the course of the last year, we've really seen an uptick in violence and discrimination against Asian Americans, mainly driven through COVID. I think being a part of the Asian culture really is just being silent and working hard. And for a long time, we took that approach of, we're going to just go to school and really truly live up to this quote model minority myth, right? And I think that recent events really helped me find my voice, because enough is enough, right? I have a grandmother that lives by herself in Toronto. And when I think about her going to the grocery store and getting slashed in the face or killed, that's really what helped me find my voice. And I think a lot of other Asian Americans have recently realized that silence is no longer our answer. I think educating ourselves on the entirety of the Asian experience is so important. And making your Asian friends and coworkers and family feel seen, I think, is really the first step. And beyond that, I think we have a really great opportunity in our organizations to think through that model minority myth. So when I worked in corporate, I've worked in organizations that had tens of thousands of employees, and yet I've only actually seen one Asian person in leadership. And so we start questioning, well, if we are this population that is so highly educated and highly skilled, and this model minority myth that's been put upon us, then we should think about why that is, right? Why do we not see Asian people at leadership levels? And we can really think about that as an industry and provide opportunities to have Asian voices in those leadership roles. When things get hard, the way that I stay motivated is that I think through, it's not me. So someone who is going to be discriminatory, someone who is racist, they are choosing to make you feel smaller than you really are. And so that's a them problem, not a me problem. And so from my perspective, and the way that I think about it is I look at all these people that have faced discriminations, but are in leadership positions. I'm really lucky that I work in an organization where our leaders, we have a woman leader. We have leaders that come from different backgrounds. And that helps me stay motivated by just realizing that you don't have to feel small. As we continue to have DEI conversations, I hope that we also keep in mind tangible results. So when I think about DEI as a journey for this country, and specifically our organizations, I think about starting from a place of understanding and learning and conversations, so that we really understand the problems and the hardships that people face. But also it's so important from my perspective to go to the next phase, which is, what are we going to do about it? And how are we really going to help people? And as we think about moving from a punitive industry in animal welfare, punishing people for not doing something, and rather supporting them in things that they may not have had the ability to do in the first place, it's really important for us to think through who we take with us. And to me, that stems from laws, the people who enforce the laws, the people who write the laws. And although we're not going to be lobbying groups anytime soon, because we're all, most of us are 501(c)(3)s, we should think about advocating on behalf of our community around laws that are discriminatory, and think through how we can get our animal control partners, our government leaders, to be on board with us and advocate for a more equitable way to ensure safe communities and animal welfare, but also in a way that brings the community with us so that they also feel a part of the journey. We need to continue the conversation, because there are still people who are silenced and are not in positions where they can speak out about these problems.
Ariel, thank you so much. That was so awesome. I so appreciate having a chance to get to know you. You've given us so many cool ideas to think about. And this is definitely an opportunity for us to continue the conversation. So I love so much of what you had to say about just the way your organization, the Animal Foundation, has really changed sort of that notion of sheltering to a community support resource. I wrote that down because I just loved that concept. And you also talked about the idea of having global versus local awareness. How do you see those two issues sort of manifesting themselves in the Las Vegas community, with your organization sort of at the center of it?
Yeah, so I think, we all serve our local communities. We are not a national animal welfare organization, But what we're starting to realize is that our local communities look really diverse, right? We have a large immigration population. And so, and specifically in our populations, we know that we have a high Latino immigration population. And so then it's a conversation about, first of all, I mean, as I mentioned in the video, like we need to be able to translate so that they can read our materials, right? It doesn't help anyone if you don't speak English and then we give you materials in English. But then also, I think there's an opportunity for all of us to think through, if we're really going to for these things to land and we're going to market to these people that need our programs, then we need to speak in a way that they speak. So understanding their culture, right? Even things like, what is valued in their culture? Are they collectivist? Are they individualist? What do they feel is important? And who typically leads those communities? And who, and where do you find those leaders to be able to vouch for on behalf of you? Those are the conversations that we're having right now so that our message and our programs land in those communities.
So what can individuals in our movement, what can they do? As you were talking about the having the conversations around DEI and how important education is, but at some point we need some real action items. And so what would you be telling some of the people on this, on our meeting today? What's a good starting point for them? And Allison, thank you so much for putting out there that May is Asian Pacific Heritage Month. And there's a great link there for other resources. And I think it really speaks to that cultural understanding and cultural humility that you were talking about in the video, how important that is for us to start to develop that.
Yeah. So I think in your organizations, I think there's a couple pieces. So first of all, when we think about people being culture fits, we should think about, what does their culture look like? I actually love that. And this was really validating to hear that I was on a conference and somebody said, if you're Asian, maybe I don't, our culture is a little bit different. Like if I bring you food, that I really like you. But I mean, I think that that's something that's really quite different, right? And not typical. And I don't know that the average American comes in and brings the, other people food. It's certainly, we have that as a part of the culture, but in the Asian culture, like we believe that food is really, really important and represents our love. And I think that, so there's understanding different people's cultures from that perspective when you work with them is one thing. I think that also when it comes to more organizationally, we should, it's really thinking about who's at your leadership levels, right? Because those people are going to be driving those decisions, and having diversity at your leadership levels is really you're really going to see the benefit of that, because there's going to be diversity in ideas, diversity in experiences. And so I think that that's really important. And then programmatically, we want to make sure that, I mentioned in the video that these programs are landing with people that we want them to land with. We have specific zip codes that we target because we know that those areas are, we know their socioeconomic status. We know that they have food deserts. And so therefore they also have, pet supply deserts, for example. And so finding those demographics and then thinking, okay, well, if those are the demographics we're trying to reach, who's living in those areas, and how can we make sure that we're coming from a place that they will understand and respect and trust? I think building trust in those communities is really important. But until you know who you're trying to build trust with, building trust with someone who, looks like me is very different than building trust maybe with someone who looks different than me. So I think that those are actions that we can take both inside our organizations and externally.
Also, I love the way you described animal welfare. It actually made me feel kind of proud. And then it also made me feel sort of ashamed, because your view of animal welfare and its ability to touch so many causes, as you said, food insecurity, housing insecurity, access to care, domestic violence, and that animal welfare should really be at those tables and talking about the solutions, because they definitely play a role in that. And that really was so exciting for me to hear that. But I also at the same time know we're so far away from that ideal, because we struggle so much in just remembering that there are two ends to the leash, And we spend so much time just focusing on the animal care that we forget that there's another part of that. And that when we start thinking about things in a more holistic model, we really are able to provide far more support to other entities besides those four-legged ones that are in our care. And I know that there is a question somewhere in that. So knowing that you came into this movement with that ideal, how are you feeling about that today? What are your thoughts mostly about what you consider to be the state of animal welfare in 2021?
I think that the conversations are starting to happen. And I think that a lot of this is, we've been in an industry and I think that, it's when you are in an industry for some time, it's harder to see the bigger picture just because you're so used to doing the work that you're doing, right? But I think we're starting to see some of these conversations with Haas, with other movements around, we need to start talking about the human side. And that's going to come naturally with those conversations about who we're going to partner with in the communities, right? How are we going to most efficiently solve those problems? And it's really to be having conversations with other social movements and coming to the table. And I think that some of that is just a mental shift as much as anything else. And I think that we're seeing numbers come down. We saw numbers come down, obviously, with COVID, and we're hoping that they'll continue to go down. So we're in a position where we can start having those conversations. I know that some other shelters, depending on where you are in the country, are not as lucky. But I think if you are in that position, then it's simply about shifting the mindset, right? If we're going to start talking about the other end of the leash with people, then we need to figure out, we need to meet with the players that are already doing that and sharing the best practices with them and seeing how we can get on board.
I love that. Thank you, Ariel. So Ariel, right before you showed your video, you and I were chatting a little bit just about DEI being so messy and the fact that I think there's a tendency on the part of white Americans to wish that this was a very simple thing to change, that we could just, download an app or check some boxes and the world would be a better place. But sadly, that's not the case. There's lots of things that we have to do as white Americans, to change the way we think, the way we act, the way we interact with each other and with people that don't look like us. And at Maddie's Fund, we've talked a lot about wanting to change the face of animal welfare. And we really mean that in a quite literal way. And yet, as a woman of Chinese descent and Canadian, you've also experienced a different set of challenges related to DEI. Would you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that, so first of all, I wish I could flip a switch too. Like, wouldn't my life be easier if we could just flip a switch, check the box, and then tomorrow I'm equal. I wish that could be the case. But yeah, I think that specifically to I think, we talked a little bit about before this call about how, there's a lot of stories out there, and I think a lot of Asian people can relate to being lumped in with white people. And I think, I was sharing a story, and I think it's a good story to share, is around, when I was first graduating school, and there was, I was driving through not such a nice part of town, and someone was, making the comment like, "Oh, we're the whitest kids here." And it was an ignorant comment for many reasons, but also I was like, well, not all of us. And he was like, well, basically. And I was kind of upset about it. And I was like, no, not even a little bit. I'm not even mixed. I'm literally just Chinese. And then I went to a friend that, was kind of more socially aware. And she had, done a lot of reading on race. And I went to her and kind of said, this person said this, and I was a little upset about it. And she looked at me and was like, oh, well, I mean, I see where he's coming from. And I was so taken aback by that. And we had to have a conversation. But I think that so often, I think Asian people get lumped in with white people simply because our skin color is lighter, which isn't actually even true for all Asians. And I think that that's also part of the problem, is that people lump Asians, which is a lot of different people, into one group. And we see even in our own race, the highest levels of disparity when it comes to income and opportunity and education. So we have people on like one end of the spectrum that is highly educated, right? We have roughly 50% of the Asian population holds a bachelor's degree over 25. And so we are highly educated, which comes with its own challenges then down the road in your career. And then we have another portion that lives in poverty. And so I think that, talking about the Asian experience is so complex and so nuanced. And I think that that's and that's really messy, right? To your point, when we talk about DEI.
So Molly Harding has a question. Molly, do you want to unmute?
Hi there. Sorry, I'm in here and it's loud, so I'm muted. But I just remember one day in the meeting, you said this comment or quote that she said, and I believe this is who said it. And I would just love to hear, like, when she shared it with you, kind of the conversation where that came out, because it's such a powerful statement.
We do not see things as they are. We see things as we are. And I think we talk about that a lot. I can't remember who the person is that said this, but it's definitely when we were meeting the following week and we had the conversation as part of our Monday call, it's definitely something that we talked a lot about in terms of just the perception that people have of what privilege looks like and who's part of it and who isn't.
Yeah. And I actually think that this is a bit, and I know that there's a lot of different perspectives, and this is just my perspective on, the DEI conversation. I think when it comes to sharing and learning, I don't think that anybody is obligated to explain their experience, because it is exhausting. But I think that, I always look at it as, if you're white and you grew up in a white community and your entire family is white, I can't expect you to know what my experiences are, right? Because they're not your experiences. What I think we expect people to do instead is to listen and learn. Because to your point, like, your reality is reality, right? Or your perception is reality. And so I think that sometimes I give a little bit more leeway, because I can't expect you to know what you don't know, but I also can't expect you to then listen and believe what I'm saying is true and not negate it or, feel defensive about it. And I think that's really important.
Thanks, Ariel. Irene, you have a question?
Not a question, but I just wanted to say hi to Ariel, since I hadn't spoken to you since that last conversation, the AMPA call on that Monday. So I just want to thank you for such an awesome talk and video. And, even though you don't speak for all Asians, I don't speak for all Asians, but the video spoke to me in a lot of ways, just, really encapsulating what has gone on for the past year. For those of Asian and even, and more specifically Chinese descent. So I just wanted to thank you for everything that you've, shared with everyone today.
Thanks, Irene. I really appreciate it. And also Irene chimed in last time, and I'm so glad that she did, because I think that, she had such good feedback. And I don't think that, to your point, we speak for all Asians, but it's also just good to start the conversation, because I think last time, Irene, you mentioned that, because the conversation was started, now you've wanted to be a part of it. And I'm so glad that you are.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. Thanks, Irene. Thanks, Ariel. Ariel, this has just been way too short. And it just feels like we've started the conversation and more needs to be said. And if you're interested in continuing this conversation, Ariel is going to be available on Maddie's Pet Forum and for the next hour and every day this week to answer any questions that we didn't get to today. So please go to the forum and continue this amazing conversation. Ariel, thank you again. It has just been such a pleasure. And I'm looking forward to having the opportunity for us to share some food together and cook together. I couldn't imagine anything better. Thanks, everyone. This has just been an amazing opportunity.
Thanks, everyone.